Picture this, the flickering glow of a single candle, casting shadows across a weathered wooden desk. Its light barely reaching the towering shelves of ancient scrolls that surround you. Somewhere in the silent halls of the Citadel, a young scholar leans closer to the parchment in their hands, their fingers tracing the faded ink of a history long forgotten. The words whisper of alliances buried by time, of secret pacts between great houses that could unravel everything we think we know about the Game of Thrones. And right now, you're stepping into that same mystery, uncovering the hidden threads that once wove Westeros together and might just shape its future. Before we begin, we'd love to know where you're joining us from tonight and what hour has drawn you into this journey through the echoes of history. Let us know in the comments below, because every great story is better when shared. There's something irresistible about the secrets of the past, isn't there? The way a single sentence, scribbled in the margins of a crumbling scroll, can append centuries of assumed truths. That's exactly what our scholar discovered: a fleeting mention of an alliance between House Stark and House Martell, a bond so carefully hidden it might as well have been written in smoke. But why would the wolves of the north and the vipers of Dorne, separated by mountains, deserts, and a kingdom's worth of ambition, ever join forces? The answer lies in the shadows of power, where even the strongest rulers knew that survival often meant bending, not breaking. And tonight, we're following that trail of whispers, from the icy halls of Winterfell to the sun-baked courts of Sunspear, to uncover how the game was truly played. This isn't just a tale of swords and sigils. It's a story about the quiet moments that change everything. The hushed conversations in torchlit corridors, the letters sealed with wax and trust, the alliances forged not on battlefields, but in the spaces between words. Westeros remembers, as the Starks would say, but it doesn't always tell. So let's pull back the tapestry of history together, thread by thread, and discover how the rise and fall of its great houses was never just about who held the throne, but who knew the secrets to keep it. The game is vast, the players many, and the stakes, well, they're written in blood and ink. Are you ready to uncover what the Meisters never dared to teach? The parchment crumbles at the edges as the scholar's hands tremble, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what they've uncovered. The letter is fragmented, its ink bled thin by time, but the words that remain are unmistakable. A coded reference to a meeting under the cover of a harvest moon, where envoys from Winterfell and Sunspear stood side by side. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was deliberate, orchestrated in the early days of Aegon's reign, when the Targaryen dragons still cast their shadow over a fractured continent. But why would two houses, so distant in culture and geography, risk such an alliance when the conqueror's gaze could burn them both? The answer lies in the unspoken rule of Westerosi politics. Even the mightiest must sometimes weave shadows to survive. Determined to trace the truth, the scholar journeys to the edge of Old Town, where a Meister long since vanished from the Citadel's records is said to keep a trove of forbidden knowledge. The path to his tower is overgrown, as if the very land wishes to hide him, and when the scholar finally stands before the old man, the air grows thick with the scent of yellowed parchment and warning. Some threads, the Meister murmurs, are meant to stay severed. His eyes flicker to the hearth, where embers glow like dragon fire, a silent reminder of what happens to those who dig too deep. But history is a siren's call, and the scholar cannot turn away. What the Meister guards isn't just a record, it's a reckoning. Scrolls sealed with the dire wolf and the spear, treaties written in hands long turned to dust, proof that while the Starks and Martells knelt to Aegon in public, their private correspondence thrums with defiance. They shared more than strategy, they shared blood, a betrothal hidden beneath layers of misdirection, meant to bind their lines against a common threat. And yet, the alliance vanished from history, as if plucked from the record by an unseen hand. That's when the scholar realizes the true danger. Some secrets aren't lost. They're buried, and those who buried them will stop at nothing to keep them that way. The Meister's final warning echoes like a dire wolf's howl in the night. The past doesn't sleep. It waits. The old Meister's fingers hover over the leather-bound tome like a falcon circling its prey, knowing the moment he opens it, nothing will ever be the same. With a sigh that seems to carry the weight of centuries, he breaks the seal, revealing pages so brittle they might dissolve into dust at a touch. They called it the Pact of Ice and Vipers. He murmurs, his voice barely louder than the crackling fire. Not for the cold of the north or the venom of Dorne, but for how quietly it could kill. The scholar leans in, breath catching as the truth unfolds. This wasn't just an alliance, it was a trap. House Stark and House Martell had woven a web to check House Lannister's ambition, using trade routes disguised as pilgrimage paths, marriages masked as diplomatic courtesies. But the real weapon was time. They meant to starve the lions of their gold, not with swords, but with patience. Yet the Meister's next words are a blade to the gut. It was never the Lannisters who broke the pact. His gnarled finger taps a name half eroded by age, a Stark, one of their own, who turned cloak for a promise whispered in the dark. The betrayal came not from Casterly Rock, but from within Winterfell's walls. A younger son, hungry for a legacy beyond his birth order, sold the secret to Ty, when Lannister's grandfather, in exchange for lands and titles. The scholar's mind reels. How many songs have been sung about Stark honor, while this truth moldered in the dark? The Meister snaps the book shut with finality. Some stones are better left unturned, he warns, but the scholar's blood is up now. Truth, once glimpsed, cannot be unseen. As they step into the moonlit courtyard, the scholar's boots crunch on gravel. A sound echoed a heartbeat later from the shadows near the gate. Two figures melt into the darkness too quickly to be chance bystanders. The Meister grips their arm, his whisper urgent. They've been watching since you arrived. The Citadel has its own secrets, and its own ways of keeping them. The air suddenly feels colder, the night too still. Whoever these watchers are, they're not here for gold or glory. They're here to silence. Because the Pact of Ice and Vipers wasn't just a failed strategy. It was proof that the Game of Thrones has always been played on two levels. The battles the realm sees, and the ones fought in the spaces between heartbeats. Now the scholar faces a choice no history can guide. Walk away and let the past stay buried, or follow this thread knowing it might unravel them both. The wind carries the distant howl of a wolf, or is it just the creak of an old gate? Either way, the message is clear. The past isn't done with them yet. The scholar's hands move frantically across the crumbling pages, their pulse quickening as the coded symbols begin to resolve into words that shouldn't exist. The ink stains their fingertips like dried blood, each stroke of the ancient script revealing fragments of a truth too dangerous to ignore. Seal of the first pact, hidden where the weirwood's roots drink from the Dornish sun. A relic, then, not just a record, but proof. If they can find it, the alliance between Stark and Martell shifts from rumor to undeniable fact. But time slips like sand through an hourglass. The candle burns low, and footsteps echo in the corridor, outside too measured, too deliberate to belong to a wandering acolyte. Someone is coming. The knock at the door is polite, almost courteous, but the voice that follows is edged with something sharper. I hear you've taken an interest in misplaced histories. The scholar freezes. Lord Manderley's envoy stands in the doorway, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He's no true nobleman. His boots are too clean for the road, his cloak too fine for a mere messenger, and the way his fingers tap against the hilt of his dagger. That's no nervous habit, it's a countdown. The Citadel values discretion, he murmurs, stepping inside without invitation. But some secrets have a way of turning up where they're not wanted. The scholar's throat tightens. They've been careless, and now the hunt has found them. A choice looms like a storm on the horizon. Reach out to Alaric, the Archmeister's disgraced apprentice, or vanish into the night alone. Alaric owes them 3 years ago. The scholar smuggled him out of Old Town when his research into Valyrian blood magic drew the wrong kind of attention. But trust is a currency that devalues with time. Would he help now, or has bitterness turned him into another weapon for their enemies? The envoy's gaze flicks to the open book on the desk, and the scholar's stomach drops. They've seen too much. There's no time to weigh options, only to act. With a feigned cough, the scholar knocks over the inkpot, black pooling like a shadow across the coded text, obliterating the clues in an instant. The envoy's smile vanishes. A shame, he says softly, but the scholar is already moving, snatching their satchel and slipping through the hidden alcove behind the bookshelf. The passage is narrow, stinking of damp stone and old secrets, but it leads to the docks, to Alaric, because if the Citadel's shadows are closing in, and a nobleman's knife waits around every corner, then the only way out is through the fire. The scholar runs, the weight of the unread pages heavy in their bag, the seal's location still half a riddle. But one thing is certain, the past isn't buried. It's alive, and it's hunting them back. The nobleman's smile is too practiced, his offer of patronage too convenient. When he leans in, the scent of rosewater clinging to his velvet doublet betrays him. This is no mere benefactor. He's Highgarden's blood, a Tyrell cousin with thorns hidden beneath the silk. A mind like yours shouldn't waste away in dusty archives. He purrs, sliding a purse heavy with gold across the table. But the scholar counts the coins with their eyes, not their hands, because the real currency here isn't gold. It's the way his gaze lingers on their satchel, where the copied passages lie tucked between layers of worn parchment. They play the fool, stammering gratitude while tracing the outline of their dagger beneath the desk. The nobleman's laugh is honeyed, but his eyes are sharp as a falcon's. Such modesty, though I'd wager you've stumbled upon something thornier than you realize. The threat curls around the words like ivy on a trellis, but the scholar has read too much history to miss the truth. When a Tyrell offers roses, they're already holding the thorns. That night, in the cramped loft above a dockside tavern, The scholar's quill races across fresh parchment by guttering candlelight. Every copied word is a risk. The nobleman's spies could be listening at the door. The innkeeper could be bought. Even the rats in the walls might carry whispers back to their master. But the seal's location burns brighter than fear. Summerhall, the ruins where dragons died and dreams turned to ash. It's poetic, really. A relic of hidden alliances, buried beneath the rubble of Targaryen ambition. But why would the Tyrells care? The answer comes like a blow. The Reach has always been a garden with too many snakes. If the Pact of Ice and Vipers resurfaces, it proves that even the mightiest houses once bent to strategies beyond swords and sieges. And that's a truth the Tyrells' newcomers to power. Their roots shallow compared to the ancient oaks of Stark and Martell cannot afford. The scholar's breath fogs the windowpane as they peer into the storm-lashed street below. Two shadows separate from the gloom, their postures too still, too watchful. The game has changed. Now, it's not just about uncovering history, it's about surviving it. Dawn finds the scholar on the road, the copied pages sewn into the lining of their cloak. Every creak of a branch, every distant hoofbeat could be the nobleman's men. But the real danger isn't the pursuit, it's the doubt gnawing at their resolve. What if the seal is just a myth? What if Summerhall's ruins guard nothing but ghosts? Then comes the whisper from the hedgerow, barely audible over the wind. You're not the first to seek it. A figure melts from the undergrowth Alaric, his face gaunt, but his eyes alight with the old fire. And you won't be the last to die for it. The scholar's grip tightens on their satchel, because the Pact was never just about the past. It's about who gets to rewrite it. The road to Summerhall is paved with more than dust and old bones. It's lined with eyes. The scholar adjusts their pilgrim's cloak, the rough wool scratching against skin, still tender from last night's hurried escape. Beside them, the scribe mutters under their breath, sharpening a quill with more force than necessary. A pilgrimage to ruins, they scoff. Next, you'll tell me we're hunting grumpkins. But the scholar doesn't laugh. Every rustle in the underbrush, every distant shout from a passing cart, sets their nerves alight. The nobleman's gold might be gone, but his reach is long. The first attack comes at dusk, when the light bleeds purple across the horizon. The bandits are too clean, their blades too fine, their questions too specific. You're the one who's been asking about old stones. Their leader sneers, flipping a dagger between his fingers like a player at a fair. The scholar's stomach knots. These aren't outlaws, they're hired knives, paid to intercept them before they reach the ruins. The scribe, ever loyal, throws themselves into the fray, taking a slash to the arm that paints the dirt crimson. The scholar drags them behind a fallen oak, hands shaking as they press a wad of linen to the wound. Why? The scribe gasps, their face pale as moonlit parchment. Why is this worth dying for? The answer hangs in the air, heavier than the scent of blood, because history isn't just ink on a page, it's power. Whoever controls the past controls the future, and the Pact of Ice and Vipers is a key to a door the great houses thought locked forever. The scholar grits their teeth. They could turn back now, let the scribe live, let the past stay buried. But then the scribe's fingers clamp around their wrist, weak but determined. You'd better be right about that seal, they rasp. Summerhall rises in the distance, its shattered towers clawing at the sky like broken fingers. The air here is thick with the ghosts of dragons. the ground littered with charred bones and the echoes of a king's ambition. The scholar steps over a fragment of mosaic, a single scarlet scale from a long-dead beast, and feels the weight of centuries pressing down. This isn't just a ruin. It's a grave, and graves, as any fool knows, are meant to keep their secrets. But the scholar's no fool. They kneel in the shadow of a collapsed arch, brushing aside ash and brittle weeds until their fingers meet something colder than stone. The seal is smaller than they imagined, no larger than a child's palm, its surface etched with intertwined dire wolves and sunbursts. Proof. The scribe's breath hitches. Gods be good, they whisper, but the scholar isn't listening, because from the darkness beyond the ruins comes the sound of boots on gravel, too many to count, too close to outrun. The nobleman didn't send bandits this time. He sent an army. The seal burns in their hand, not with magic, but with the terrible knowledge of what comes next. They could drop it, let it vanish into the rubble again, pretend they never found it. But the scribe meets their gaze, bloodied but unbowed, and gives a single nod. Some truths are worth bleeding for. The scholar tightens their grip. Let the hunters come. Summerhall has already birthed one fire that changed the world. Perhaps it's time for another. The seal's weight feels like a living thing in the scholar's palm, pulsing with the echo of centuries-old promises. But it's the journal beside it, its leather cover cracked like sun-baked earth, that steals their breath. The Martell Envoy's final words are barely legible. The ink faded to ghosts of themselves, but the venom in them is fresh as ever. The Stark boy swore on his father's bones. The Envoy had written, yet his hands were already reaching for Lannister gold. The betrayal wasn't just political, it was personal. A second son's hunger for recognition, a father's blind trust, and a single midnight meeting in the bowels of Casterly Rock that unraveled years of careful planning. Footsteps echo through the chamber like thunder, too close, too many. Torchlight licks at the crumbling walls as the scholar frantically tucks the journal into their tunic, its pages whispering against their skin like a dying man's last confession. The seal burns colder now, not a relic, but a burden. The armed men fan out, their blades glinting in the flickering light. No bandit leathers this time. These are knights in service to a lord who knows exactly what they're hunting. You've stumbled into a grave, scholar. Their leader drawls, his voice slick with false sympathy. Best to leave the dead where they lie. The scholar's fingers tighten around the seal. Surrender it, and the truth dies here, another casualty of Summerhall's ashes. But the journal presses against their ribs, its secrets a silent scream. The Envoy's final entry flashes in their mind. They will call me a fool for trusting snow and vipers to mix, but the frost that kills the snake is the same that starves the wolf. There's no time to parse the riddle, only to act. With a sudden lunge, the scholar hurls the nearest torch into a pile of ancient tapestries, their threads as dry as old bones. Flames erupt like dragon fire, swallowing the chamber in smoke and chaos. The knights stagger back, coughing, but one quicker than the rest catches the scholar's wrist in a grip like iron. You'll burn with your precious history, he snarls, but history, as it turns out, has teeth. The scribe's dagger finds the knight's thigh before he can finish the threat, their face streaked with soot and determination. Run, they shout, shoving the scholar toward a fissure in the wall too narrow for armored men, just wide enough for desperate souls. The scholar hesitates, the seal clenched in one hand, the envoy's words seared into their mind. Behind them, the journal's pages curl in the heat, its truths turning to smoke, but some fires can't be unlit. Some secrets refuse to stay buried. As the scholar plunges into the darkness, the last thing they hear isn't the roar of flames or the shouts of pursuers. It's the whisper of a name, half lost to time, carried on the scorched wind, the betrayer's name, and it changes everything. The chamber groans like a dying beast as stones rain down around them, the scholar's desperate gamble paying off in collapsing arches and billowing dust. The scribe grabs their arm, yanking them sideways just as a timber crashes where they'd stood moments before alive, but not unscathed. Blood trickles from the scholar's temple, where a flying shard grazed them, warm and insistent. A reminder that history doesn't surrender its secrets without drawing blood first. They stumble through the newly formed crevice, the seal a leaden weight in their satchel, its significance now horrifyingly clear. This isn't just a relic. It's a coronation waiting to happen. The scribe's breath comes in ragged gasps as they navigate the labyrinth of half-collapsed passages, their injured arm clutched tight to their chest. That nobleman, they hiss between steps. He wasn't just hunting the seal, he was hunting the air. The scholar's stomach plummets, of course. The Pact of Ice and Vipers wasn't merely a military strategy. It was sealed with a marriage, one that produced a child hidden away when the alliance shattered. A child whose descendants would have a stronger claim to Winterfell than any Bolton or Karstark. And that nobleman, with his 2 clean boots and rosewater scent. He wasn't just a Tyrell lackey. He was a gardener planting thorns around a throne. Moonlight filters through a crack in the ruins ahead, beckoning like a promise. But freedom comes at a cost. The scribe halts abruptly, pressing a finger to their lips. Beyond the crumbling wall, voices carry on the night air. Not the rough commands of hired swords, but the measured tones of Meisters. The Citadel's shadows have finally caught up. They'll burn the seal, the scribe whispers, their voice trembling with something fiercer than fear, and us with it. The scholar's mind races. If the nobleman wanted the heir legitimized, why would the Citadel intervene? Then it clicks like a lock yielding to a key. The Meisters don't serve kings. They serve stability. A hidden Stark Martell bloodline wouldn't just threaten the Lannisters or Tyrells. It would unravel every careful compromise that's held the realm together since Robert's rebellion. The game isn't just being played, it's being rigged. A hand closes around the scholar's wrist, not the scribe's, but a stranger's, emerging from the darkness like a specter. The Archmeister's disgraced apprentice, Alaric, his face gaunt, but his grip iron strong. You've stirred a hornet's nest, he murmurs, pulling them toward a gap in the stone. Now let's see if you're brave enough to steal the honey. Behind them, the first torch appears at the tunnel's mouth, its light licking hungrily at the shadows. The scholar hesitates for only a heartbeat. Some truths are worth more than safety. Some fires, once lit, can't be put out. As they slip into the night, the seal burns against their ribs. Not just metal, but a live coal ready to ignite a war 6 generations in the making. And the scholar, they're no longer just a keeper of secrets. They've become the spark. The cobblestones of King's Landing are slick with recent rain, the air thick with the stench of fish and forge smoke, a far cry from the quiet decay of Summerhall. The scholar clutches their satchel like a shield, the seal inside humming with the weight of 1,000 unspoken oaths. They find the Spymaster in a nondescript wine sink near the Street of Silk, a place where secrets are traded more freely than coin. He sits in a shadowed corner, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, watching the scholar approach with the unblinking focus of a spider, surveying a fly caught in its web. "You've been busy," the Spymaster murmurs, sliding a cup of sour red across the table. His voice is smooth as polished marble, but his eyes sharp as Valyrian steel. "Miss nothing." The scholar hesitates, then drinks. The wine tastes like vinegar and warning. The nobleman isn't acting alone. The Spymaster continues, tracing a fingertip along the rim of his own cup. He answers to a cabal of lords who believe the realm is too stagnant, too predictable. They want chaos, and your little artifact, a smile, thin as a knife's edge. It's the spark they need to burn down the order of things. The scholar's pulse stutters. This isn't just about claims or thrones. It's about unraveling the careful tapestry of alliances that's kept the Seven Kingdoms from tearing themselves apart. The Spymaster leans closer, the candlelight carving hollows beneath his cheekbones. "Give me the seal," he says softly, "and I can make you disappear." New name, new life, far from knives in the dark. His gaze flicks to the scribe, still favoring their injured arm. "Both of you." The offer hangs in the air, sweet as poisoned honey. The scholar knows what surrender means. The seal vanishing into some vault, the pact forgotten, history rewritten by the victors once again. But the scribe's fingers brush their wrist. A silent plea. Outside, the distant clang of the city watches bells echoes like a dirge. Time stretches thin, taut as a bowstring. Then, from the shadows near the door, a flicker of movement. A face the scholar last saw wreathed in torchlight at Summerhall. The nobleman's man. The Spymaster follows their gaze and sighs. "Ah, it seems you're out of time to decide." His hand slides beneath the table, where steel gleams dully in the dark. But remember this, some secrets aren't meant to be kept. They're meant to be wielded. The scholar's grip tightens on the satchel. The seal is more than proof now. It's a weapon, and weapons, as any student of history knows, are only as dangerous as the hands that hold them. The wine leaves a bitter aftertaste on the scholar's tongue as they slide the seal across the table slowly, deliberately, their fingers lingering just a breath too long. The Spymaster's amusement is a quiet thing, curling at the edges of his mouth like parchment, held too close to a flame. "Clever," he murmurs, pocketing the relic with one hand, while the other taps the journal still clutched in the scholar's grip. But copying its contents won't save you. Truths like these don't just burn bridges. They salt the earth beneath them. His warning hangs between them, heavier than the seal ever was. The scribe's breath hitches as they edge toward the door, their injured arm cradled close. Shadows shift near the tavern's entrance, too polished for common cut versus too still for drunkards. The nobleman's men. The scholar's pulse thrums like a trapped bird. They'd expected the Spymaster's betrayal, perhaps even welcomed it as the lesser evil. But the game has layers even they hadn't anticipated. The Spymaster rises, his cloak whispering against the floorboards. "Run, if you like," he says, almost kindly. "But remember, wild, fire doesn't care who lights it, only what it consumes." The alley outside is a maze of refuse and ragged laughter, the scribe's footsteps faltering as they round a corner. He let us go, they gasp, pressing a hand to their bleeding arm. Why? The scholar doesn't answer. Their mind races over the journal's copied pages. Not just names and dates, but a map. Not of lands or castles, but of bloodlines. A single drop of Stark and Martell blood, thin as a rumor, threading through the veins of a house no one would suspect. The Spymaster hadn't just wanted the seal destroyed. He'd wanted the scholar to see the pattern, to follow it. A shutter creaks overhead. The scholar freezes, pulling the scribe into the lee of a butcher's stall. Above them, a figure leans from a window, scanning the street with the patience of a hunter. The nobleman's man, but there's something new in his posture. Not urgency, but calculation. He isn't chasing, he's herding. The realization strikes like a slap. They were never meant to escape. They were meant to lead. The scribe's fingers dig into the scholar's sleeve. We're bait, they whisper, the horror dawning. Somewhere ahead, the trail they've been forced to blaze leads straight to the one person the Cabal actually wants: the heir. The scholar's jaw tightens. The Spymaster's game isn't just about controlling secrets. It's about controlling who gets to bleed for them. And now, with every step they take, they're writing the next page in someone else's tragedy. The moon slips behind a cloud, plunging the street into momentary darkness. A choice looms: turn back and face the knives, or press forward and deliver death wrapped in good intentions. The scholar hesitates, the copied pages a leaden weight against their ribs. Some truths once known cannot be unknown, and some paths once taken cannot be undone. The cellar beneath the street of looms smells of mildew and old ink, a far cry from the Citadel's perfumed archives. The scholar's candle gutters as they descend, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the dark. The Archivist waits at the bottom, their face obscured by a hood, not out of secrecy, but necessity. The burns along their jawline tell a story of their own. Knowledge in this city has a way of biting back. You're the one digging up dead alliances, they murmur, voice rough as unsanded parchment. Not a question, an acknowledgement. The scholar's satchel feels heavier suddenly, the copied pages inside humming with danger. The Archivist leads them through a labyrinth of shelves, their fingers brushing spines with the reverence of a septon at prayer. These aren't just books, they are testaments. Forbidden lineages, suppressed treaties, the true cost of every peace the realm has ever celebrated. The Pact of Ice and Vipers didn't fail because it was flawed, the Archivist says, pulling a slender volume bound in wolfskin. It failed because Tywin Lannister's grandfather paid a Meister to misdeliver a letter. The scholar's breath catches. One misplaced scrap of parchment, and Dorne's armies marched a moon too late to support the Starks against the Ironborn. A misunderstanding that left Winterfell vulnerable and the North bleeding, but the Archivist isn't finished. They unroll a scrap of vellum so fragile it threatens to dissolve at a touch. A child's drawing, smudged with age. Two figures, one with a wolf's head, the other crowned with sun rays. The alliance lived on in stories, they explain, nursery tales, bedtime oaths. The kind of truth that survives because no one thinks to burn it. The scholar's throat tightens. All this time, they've been hunting grand conspiracies, while the real proof was whispered between parents and children, hidden in plain sight. A crash echoes from above, wood splintering, boots on stairs. The Archivist's hands go still. They're here for you, they say, calm as a frozen pond. But when they meet the scholar's gaze, there's fire beneath the ice. Take this. They press a key into the scholar's palm. Cold iron, shaped like a dire wolf's tooth. The true archive isn't under King's Landing. It's beneath the heart tree at Raventree Hall. The footsteps grow louder. The archivist shoves the drawing and wolfskin book into the scholar's satchel. Go, before history repeats itself. As the scholar slips through a crack in the wall, the last thing they see is the archivist drawing a dagger from their sleeve, not to fight, but to slice their own palm. Blood drips onto the cellar's threshold, a final ward against those who would erase the past. The message is clear. Some truths are worth bleeding for. And now, the scholar must decide if they are too. The archivist's hood slips back as they step into the flickering candlelight, revealing not the face of a scholar, but the cold smirk of a player who's been holding the best cards all along. You're predictable as a Meister's bedtime. They drawl, pulling a dagger from their sleeve. Not the crude steel of a cutthroat, but the ornate blade of a nobleman's envoy. The scent of rosewater clings to them, faint but unmistakable. This was never a refuge, it was a snare. The scholar's mind races faster than their pulse. Every scroll they've touched, every question they've asked the archivist has been weaving it all into a report for their true master. But lies, like old parchment, crumble at the edges. The scholar's fingers brush the wolfskin book in their satchel, its spine rough against their fingertips. A desperate plan forms. You've been so careful, the scholar says, backing toward a shelf of crumbling tax records. But you missed one thing. Their voice drops to a whisper. The pact wasn't just acknowledged by Egon, it was his idea. The archivist hesitates just for a heartbeat, but it's enough. The scholar hurls the candle into a pile of desiccated scrolls, the flames leaping up like vengeful spirits. In the chaos, they duck beneath a collapsing beam, snatching a yellowed letter from the archivist's own belt. The parchment crackles in their grip, its broken seal still bearing the faint imprint of dragon fire, proof not just of the alliance, but of the conqueror's own hand in its making. Smoke stings their eyes as they bolt through the maze of shelves, the archivist's curses ringing behind them. A hidden alcove yawns open, one last gift from the true archivist, the burned keeper of secrets, who'd rather die than betray them. The scholar plunges into the darkness, the letter clutched to their chest. Behind them, the fire consumes lies and truth alike. But some words, once read, can never be unspoken. And the ones burning brightest in the scholar's mind, they're not from the letter. They're from the archivist's own ledger, left open in their haste. A list of names, payments, and one chilling entry. The air lives, and they're watching. The Citadel's great hall has never felt smaller. The scholar stands at the center of a ring of arched windows, each pane casting dagger-sharp lines of sunlight across the worn stone floor. The weight of the wolfskin book in their hands is nothing compared to the silence pressing down from the raised benches where the Meisters sit row upon row of gray-cloaked judges, their chains glinting like manacles in the pale morning light. The air smells of ink and iron, of secrets kept too long. You bring fire into a library, Archmeister Orwyle intones, his voice as dry as the parchment he guards. Do you understand what you're asking us to burn? But the scholar is done with caution. They open the book with deliberate slowness, the creak of its spine echoing like a drawn sword. The pact of ice and vipers wasn't hidden by time, they say, voice steady despite the tremor in their hands. It was buried by men who thought themselves wiser than kings. The pages fall open to the child's drawing, wolf and son entwine, and the room stirs like a beast roused from sleep. Murmurs ripple through the benches. A younger Meister, his chain still bright with new forged links, leans forward with something like hunger in his eyes. Archmeister Marwyn's laughter cuts through the whispers like a cleaver. Truth, he spits the word like a curse. You think the small folk care which lord betrayed whom 3 generations back? This will only give the ambitious another blade to wield. His fist comes down on the arm of his chair, rattling the silver links of his chain, but the scholar doesn't flinch. They've faced knives in dark alleys, fire in ruined halls. What's one more old man's rage? It's not about the past. The scholar's voice drops, forcing the Meisters to strain forward. It's about the lie we've all been living. They lift the yellowed letter plucked from the burning cellar, its broken dragon seal catching the light. Egon didn't just tolerate the pact, he designed it, a balance of power, north and south, to keep any one house from growing too strong. The gasp that follows is sharp enough to draw blood. Because if the conqueror himself orchestrated this, then every war, every betrayal since has been a rebellion against his will, a truth that could unravel the realm stitch by stitch. The silence that follows is thicker than castle walls. Even Marwyn's scowl falters. High above, a single raven circles the vaulted ceiling, its shadow darting across the faces of the men below. The scholar watches it, a black speck against the light, and understands suddenly what the Archivist meant. Some truths don't need to be shouted, they just need to take flight. With deliberate slowness, the scholar steps back from the lectern. The book stays, the letter stays. Let the Meisters argue over ash and ink. The real work is happening beyond these walls, in the taverns and market squares where stories are already spreading like wildfire. The scholar turns toward the doors, their boots echoing on the stone. Behind them, the first shouts erupt, accusations, denials, the crash of an overturned bench. They don't look back. History isn't written in quiet rooms. It's written by those brave enough to walk out of them. The raven arrives at dusk, its feathers slick with rain, the message tied to its legs sealed with wax, the color of dried blood. The scholar unrolls the parchment with fingers that refuse to steady. 3 words, that's all it takes to unravel months of fear. The nobleman's dead. No fanfare, no detailed confession, just a body found face down in the Blackwater rush. His velvet doublet snagged on the pilings like a discarded puppet's costume. The scribe exhales sharply, their relief a living thing between them, but the scholar feels no victory, only the cold certainty that a man like that doesn't drown by accident. Whispers slither through the city like rats in the walls. Some say the Spymaster finally tired of his games. Others murmur of a knife slipped between ribs by his own allies when the cost of silence grew too high. The scholar traces the broken seal on their satchel, where the wolf and son still press faintly into the leather, and wonders if the nobleman ever realized the truth. He wasn't hunting power. He was hunting a ghost. The pact was never about crowns or conquest. It was about the quiet understanding that some houses aren't meant to kneel. Dawn finds the scholar in the dim glow of a lone candle, their quill moving across fresh parchment like a blade through water. Every word is a risk, every sentence a potential death warrant, but the truth has a way of rotting when locked in the dark. Better to let it breathe, even if it must wait decades beneath floorboards or inside hollowed-out books. The scribe watches from the doorway, their bandaged arm a stark reminder of how close the past's teeth can come. They'll never stop looking, they whisper. The scholar doesn't pause. I know, the ink pools black as a moonless night. Let the hunters come. Let them burn every page they find, because the real story isn't in the words. It's in the spaces between them, the way a Dornish princess's signature leans toward a Stark lord's like a flower to the sun, the smudged thumbprint of a Meister who hesitated before betraying them. History isn't written by the victors. It's written by the ones who refuse to let the fire take everything. Outside, the first birds of morning begin to sing. The scholar blows gently on the wet ink, watching as the candle's flame trembles not from fear, but from the weight of what it means to bear light in a world so determined to stay dark. The candle has long since burned to a nub in its holder, the wax pooled like frozen tears across the desk where the scholar once worked. But time has a way of turning whispers into echoes, and echoes into storms. Decades after the last parchment was hidden beneath floorboards or slipped between the pages of forgotten histories, a young apprentice in the Citadel's lowest archives stumbles upon a curious thing, a copy of the lineages of the great houses with margins filled not with scholarly notes, but with frantic scribbles. The ink is faded, the hand unfamiliar, but the words crackle with urgency. The pact was never broken. It was outgrown. The discovery sends ripples through the halls of learning like a stone tossed into a still pond. Suddenly, Meisters who dismiss the scholar's work as mere obsession find themselves tracing the same hidden threads. The marriages unrecorded in official lineages, the trade agreements that mysteriously favored Dornish wine and northern timber at the same time, the songs sung in both Winterfell and Sunspear about a wolf who loved the sun. The past, it seems, left breadcrumbs, and now a new generation is hungry. In the taverns of King's Landing, where sailors and sellswords trade stories like currency, the tale takes on new life. A bard with a lyre shaped like a dire wolf's head sings of a song older than thrones, his melody weaving stark frost and Martell fire into something that makes even hardened knights fall silent. A merchant from Gulltown swears her grandmother kept a dagger with a pommel of intertwined sunburst and wolf, a gift, she claimed, from a lover who walked both deserts and snow. The scholar's name, once spoken only in hushed tones, now dances on the lips of people who have never set foot in a library. But the true legacy isn't in the grand revelations. It's in the quiet moments, the way a young lordling hesitates before repeating the tired maxim that the North remembers, because now he wonders what exactly it's remembering. The way a Dornish princess, reading the scholar's reconstructed letters aloud to her council, pauses at the line, "We are not rivals, but reflections." The alliances of old may be dust, but their ghost lingers in the space between choices, to trust or betray, to cling to power or share it. And then there are the others, the ones who still lurk in the shadows, fingers itching to snatch the scattered pages from history's grasp. They whisper that the scholar's work is dangerous not because it's false, but because it's incomplete. Some secrets, after all, are buried not to hide them, but to preserve them for the right hands. In a tower far from prying eyes, a woman with a scarred jaw traces the scholar's final known words: "The game isn't over. It's just waiting for new players." And smiles. The candle she lights isn't for reading, it's a signal, because the past isn't a book to be closed. It's a blade being passed from one hand to the next, sharpened by every cut it makes. And somewhere, in the space between a dying ember and a new flame, the scholar's truth takes root, not as an answer, but as a question that won't stop burning. What if we chose differently this time? The first copies appear at dawn, slipped beneath doors, tucked into market stalls, even pinned to the great oak in the center of villages, with daggers made of northern steel. The scholar's words, once whispered in cellars and burned from ledgers, now stand bold as a banner in the morning light. The realm wakes to a choice: dismiss the pages as madness, or let them unravel the careful lies stitched into history's tapestry. By noon, the whispers begin. A blacksmith in the riverlands traces the inked direwolf with soot-streaked fingers, murmuring to his apprentice that his grandmother spoke of such things. In Dorne, a water merchant's daughter reads aloud to a crowd gathered in the shadow of a broken tower, her voice trembling over the description of a marriage contract signed in secret. The Citadel's ravens take flight like a storm of black feathers, their scrolls weighted with denunciations, forgeries, the Archmeisters declare, their chains rattling with outrage. But the protest rings hollow, too loud, too quick. The scribe, watching from the shadows of a bustling inn, grinds their teeth. They'd recognize that particular shade of panic anywhere. It's the sound of men who have just realized the dam has cracked. Then comes the Spymaster's message, delivered not by Raven, but by a street urchin with eyes too old for her face. The parchment bears no seal, only a single phrase etched in a hand grown unsteady with age. You've given the realm a mirror. Pray it doesn't shatter. The scholar reads it once, then lets the wind take it, watching as the paper dances over the rooftops like a leaf on the current. They don't need to ask what it means. The game has always been about control, who shapes the stories, who guards the gates of memory. Now the gates stand open, reactions splinter like dropped glass. In the north, a lord gathers his household to burn the papers in a ceremony meant to shame the unnamed author, only for his youngest daughter to rescue a half-charred page from the flames, pressing it between the pages of her prayer book. In King's Landing, a guild of actors begins staging the tale in back alley theaters, the crowds growing each night until gold cloaks are sent to disperse them. The scholar watches it all from a distance, their hood pulled low, their heart a drumbeat beneath their ribs. The Spymaster was wrong about one thing. This isn't a mirror, it's a seed, and seeds don't care if the hands that planted them are afraid of the harvest. The scholar's cottage stands at the edge of a nameless village, its thatched roof sagging under years of rain, its walls lined with shelves carved from driftwood. Here, far from the Citadel's whispers and King's Landing's knives, they tend a garden of herbs and memory, their hands now more familiar with soil than parchment. The villagers know them only as the quiet one who mends broken bones and brews remedies for fever, never guessing those same hands once rewrote history. But every so often, when the wind carries the scent of salt from the distant sea, the scholar pauses, their gaze drifting northward, Somewhere, a new generation is reading their words. Somewhere, a Meister's pen hesitates over a lie. Time has a way of sanding down even the sharpest truths, but some things resist erosion. In the halls of Winterfell, a steward finds an old chest hidden behind a tapestry, its lock rusted shut. When forced open, it reveals not gold or weapons, but letters, dozens of them, each bearing the unmistakable cadence of a Martell's wit. In Sunspear, a novice scribe stumbles upon a ledger from a century past, its entries detailing shipments of glass and wool between the deserts and the north, marked with a tiny, intertwined wolf and sun. The scholar's work didn't just survive, it multiplied, yet the Game of Thrones grinds on, indifferent. Lords still plot in candlelit chambers, knights still swear oaths they'll break by dawn, and the small folk still pay the price in blood and bread. But something has shifted. When a Dornish envoy now rides north, the Starks don't just see a viper. They hear an echo of a voice long silenced, a promise their ancestors once made. When a northern bard sings of the wolf who loved the sun, crowds don't just cheer, they lean in, as if catching a secret meant for them alone. The scholar's truth isn't a torch to burn down the old order. It's an ember, glowing patiently in the ash, waiting for the right breath to bring it back to life. On the longest night of the year, the scholar takes a single parchment from a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. The ink has faded, the edge is brittle, but the words remain. History isn't a chain to bind us, it's a loom, and every thread we pick up changes the pattern. They hold it to the firelight one last time, then let it fall into the flames. The cottage fills with the scent of burning vellum, sweet and bitter all at once. Outside, the first snow of winter begins to fall, blanketing the world in quiet. Somewhere, in a tower or a tavern or a child's bedtime story, another reader unrolls a scroll. Another hand traces the words left behind. The game never ends, but neither does the hunt for what's true. The apprentice's fingers tremble as they brush dust from the leather-bound journal tucked behind a row of forgotten star charts. The candle flickers, casting dancing shadows over pages, filled not with celestial calculations, but with cramped, feverish script, every margin packed with annotations, every blank space weaponized for truth. At first, the apprentice thinks it's merely someone's discarded musings. Then they spot the tiny direwolf inked near the spine, nearly worn away by time, and their breath catches. Legends whisper through the Citadel's halls about a scholar who vanished decades ago, taking dangerous knowledge with them. Could this be? A loose page slips free, floating to the floor like a leaf from the weirwood tree. The apprentice kneels, their shadow swallowing the words written there. When you read this, ask yourself, who benefits from our forgetting? The ink is faded, but the challenge is fresh as yesterday. Around them, the archives hum with the usual sounds, scratching quills, the shuffle of slippered feet, the occasional cough echoing between shelves. No one notices the apprentice sitting perfectly still, a secret burning in their lap hotter than any candle flame. They turn the page carefully, half expecting the words to dissolve like mist. Instead, they find a map, not of lands, but of marriages. Delicate lines connecting Stark to Martell, Arryn to Tyrell, threads woven across generations like a spider's web. In the corner, a single drop of wax, pressed with what might be a sunburst, or perhaps a dragon's scale. The apprentice's pulse thrums. This isn't just history. It's a key. Voices approach Arch. Meister Valen's distinctive wheeze, the clink of his copper-chased staff on stone. The apprentice acts without thinking, tucking the journal beneath their robes. The cold weight against their ribs feels less like stolen property and more like borrowed time. Later, in the privacy of their cell, they'll discover the final page. A list of names, some crossed out, others circled thrice, and at the bottom, a phrase that will haunt their dreams. The game isn't played on battlefields, but in the space between what we're told and what we dare to ask. Dawn finds the apprentice at the window, watching light creep across the honeywine. Somewhere out there, the scholar's truth waits, in unburnt letters, in songs sung off-key, in the way an old innkeeper's grandmother still spits when Lannister gold is mentioned. The past never really dies. It just waits for the right listener. The apprentice touches quill to fresh parchment, hesitates, then begins to write, not a copy. A continuation, because some stories refuse to end. They only change hands.